back to another Galaxie episode. We're not actually working on the Galaxie, we're working on parts of the Galaxie. This is the heater box that we pulled out last episode when we cleared out pretty much everything from behind the dash. And what we're trying to do is pull out the heater core so that I can find a replacement. It's not necessarily that this one leaks. I have no idea if it does or not. But if you've missed the previous episodes of this car was in a flood. That's why this looks as terrible as it does. And pretty much everything, brake lines, fuel lines, all that stuff that we've had on the car has been full of water and everything else. So we're going to try and, get around that a little bit and avoid those issues by pulling out the heater core. The downside is that this heater core, that I haven't been able to find another one. They just don't make them. I needed to do a little bit more research and try and cross-reference. Maybe they're used in some other Ford car. Ford was pretty good about that, so I find it hard to believe that they only used it in this for 1 year. But I haven't been able to find one, so we're going to pull this one out, and then we're going to see what we can do about upgrading it to some easier-to-find alternative. And while we're at it, if we need to, supposedly you can pull this without pulling the dash. But if that's not the case, I want to be able to try and replace this without having to pull the dash, because that was a cluster, to put it lightly. And there's no interior or paint or anything nice in this car. Before we start on it, though, the first thing is to give this a good vacuum. Because, there's a mouse house on top of it, and there might be remnants, and also there's sand everywhere. Just sand. I don't know. I don't get it. Well, I just got back from cleaning it up. Still looks like it came from the bottom of the ocean, because kind of did. Flood. But it at least is giving off far fewer hantavirus vibes. So we are going to dig into this, see what we can do to take it apart, and hopefully not break anything. Except for some of these. These were already messed up. Well, there's all sorts of gunk in here. Definitely going to need to wash this out again. And judging by all the crap on the heater core, it was on its way out as well. Because typically when a heater core starts looking like that, that's not good. There's a lot of oxidation and what looks like a lot of leaking. Well, it's also a good thing we took this apart because a couple reasons. One, it is disgusting inside. Two, there's actually some damage that we need to fix. So I'm guessing, and especially the way some of the screws were, it looks like someone has been in here before. There's just a random screw right there. No idea where that one even came from. So yeah, definitely going to need to do a lot of cleaning and potentially some repair, which that was something I wasn't really planning on. Planning on modifying it, just not repairing it. And the heater core is garbage, so there's that too. So last time we cleared out the heater box and a bunch of the stuff from the dash, and this time we're going to keep going on that. Not stuff we're getting rid of, but we want to clear a bunch of this stuff off because some of it needs kind of fixed or at the very least cleaned up because flood and, shocking. But a lot of these parts aren't meant to necessarily be underwater. So they're a little rusty. That's what we're working on while I try and figure out what exactly I need to fix the heater box. And then also what I need to do to either find a heater core that will work, or modify the heater box to fit a new heater core. Once I get that figured out, we'll show that. But for right now, it's all about the interior. We got the gas pedal out of the way, and before we move on to work on the e-brake that I think is stuck, whole rust thing, we want to get these out of the way. These are the fresh air vents. The fenders themselves have vents that feed in fresh air. However, there is nothing fresh about these. They are filled with dirt and dust and rust and everything else, so we want to get those out of the way. Alright, well this right here, as we just pulled this off, is why we're getting these off, so we can clean them. All that, it's just full of it, and the door's still falling out because the door's closed. So, little flapper. Well, finally got the C-clip off, so now we've got the e-brake assembly out. The ironic part of that is once we got it out, then it started moving. So, I don't trust it because it kind of looks like it came from the Titanic. So we're definitely going to clean it up, give it some oil, and give it a good once-over because this being a manual transition is kind of important. Alright, the last thing that we're going to pull off the firewall, I think, until I change my mind, is the squirter for the windshield wipers. We're out here because the main thing holding it on is this nut right here that fits over the barb for the squirter line. So we're going to loosen that up, pull that out of the way, and then at a future date we'll probably go through that, make sure it works, make sure we don't need to buy any replacement parts for it, because it's weird and quirky, and like I said, I want to keep it. So we're going to put it back in. The wife was able to help last night, but today it's just me working on stuff. And what we're working on right now is starting to go through all the dash components and get them cleaned up. The idea behind that is clean them up, get them all nice and painted, if whatever else that we're going to do with that. So once we do finally get the firewall cleaned up, which is going to be probably next, and start putting stuff back in, these are ready to go back in. So first thing is do any disassembly on these that we can. I actually don't know what disassembly we can do on these. It'd be nice to get the flappers out and clean those up, and then really just give everything a nice scrub down because they're kind of gross and yeah, just Gross. It also gives me time to find new gasket material, because I don't know what that was, but it wasn't doing much gasketing. Well, the first thing is whatever sealant is on that is just crumbling, so I'm going to clean that up. Probably end up putting some silicone on that to fix that, so let's get this end cap off. Well, unfortunately, there's not as much disassembly as I was hoping for on these. I was hoping to get the little flapper vents. I was hoping to get those out, but those seem to be some sort of a press fit, which is unfortunate, because it'd be nice to be able to replace those or replace a seal or something like that, but they're kind of stuck in there, so it's going to be what it is. Well, here we have the blower motor. I don't think it's supposed to look like this. It also does not turn easy at all. I think it is pretty well foobarred. So gonna have to source a new one of these or an upgraded one. And by upgraded, I mean find an aftermarket one and try and make it work. But we're gonna take this apart and see what all we need to match and either get a new one of these or, something. Well, I was going to work on the blower motor next, but it's soaking in PB Blaster because it couldn't get anything loose on it. So we're going to work on the windshield washer pump. It does seem to work, which is great. However, it looks a little bit bent, which maybe it is, maybe it's not. I really don't know. But like everything else on this car, it was in the flood, and everything's been full of sand. So I'm assuming that this is going to be the exact same way and also be full of sand, and that's not something I want it, pushed around through the windshield wiper fluid and ending up on the windshield. Sand on the windshield, probably not the best for the longevity of the windshield. So we're going to try and take this apart and clean it, or see what we can do to clean it and get it working like new. I may never get it out, but sand. That doesn't bode well for something that's supposed to be cleaning your windshield. So that's going to take a little bit of figuring out to see if I can get a new one of these because, well, frankly, everything's broken. Yeah, it's great. This is broken, blower motor's broken, blower motor's stuck. It's going great. Whose stupid idea was it to buy a car that had been in a flood? Oh yeah, it was me. That was dumb. Well, this does pull apart. That's not supposed to look like that. And I'm guessing that's not supposed to be in it either. Good news. Spring looks great. This guy's a little bit of cracking in it, but I don't think it goes all the way through. I think it's just kind of surface cracks. So this will probably clean up. I don't know what to do about this because it definitely needs cleaned up. And I don't know... Like, it's just disintegrating. So yeah, that's going to take some research to figure out exactly what to do. Good news is, not all that was sand. The bad news is, that was actually part of the assembly that was disintegrating. So we're going to figure that out and try and come up with a plan moving forward. So that piece was actually really far gone. The more that you kind of cleaned it, and I just basically gave it a nice brushing, and more of it fell off. Tried to weld it without actually really thinking because it was heavy, I think it's zinc. That makes sense why it was that corroded and the corrosion was white. That wasn't just like remnants of something else. That was actually what the material was. It's not aluminum. Um, Too heavy to be aluminum. And it's not steel. So my guess is zinc or something similar to that. So what I ended up doing was taking a bunch of measurements of it with calipers, and then I basically ground it down. And this is now a proof of concept with a 3D printed piece. This isn't the final one. This is just PLA, but it's going to hopefully be a proof of concept. I didn't add the little flat part on there yet, just because I wanted to make sure this fit first. All right, so here's what I did. Made a little 3D printed piece, and it's got the groove that this bellows actually sits in, 3D printed into it, and then it's got a cutout that this fits into. So that at least fits. Next, we're going to stick this inside the bellows and see how well it fits. Maybe. Come on. Alright. And so it's a little loose, just because there's nothing holding in, but that actually looks like it fits pretty well. Looks like the groove's deep enough. So I did grab a washer to hopefully act as, just a something. Because really all we need to do is make sure that this actually pumps air. So, see if I can thread this on. Don't spin. Don't spin. Okay. So we're going to tighten this up. Because that's what gives us the seal. And I can feel air moving. Cool. So, proof of concept. That actually works. So now what I'm going to do, except for that's offset, well, that might just be that's just the washer. All right. So now that I know that works, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reprint that piece in ABS. And so that way I don't have to worry about temperature. And then, yeah, we will have saved this little pump. You can get a new bellows or whatever, bladder, whatever you want to call this thing. But mine's actually seems to be in pretty decent shape, so I'm not going to worry about it. So, and that's what we end up with when it's all together. Got the little groove, and then this, you can see where I ground down. The spring inside the bellows sits still on top of the metal piece rather than the plastic. This whole assembly is a little bit longer. Hopefully we don't run into any issues. You can see where the paint was. It's pretty close to the end, but if it does, we've got this little spacer that we can actually just grind down this side that's not threaded, and that will get us make up the distance that we need for everything to fit. So now that we have our 3D printed piece made, this time out of ABS, so we don't have to worry about, higher temperatures being on firewall, versus our PLA mock-up, the next thing that we want to do is fasten these together. So not only do they stay together, but also we need to create a seal. If air gets around here, it's not going to work as well as what it should. So to do that, we want something that is semi-permanent, and that we can put it in, and if it works, we can leave it, and we don't need to worry about it. But if something did happen, like the ABS part broke or whatever else, or the rest of this just rotted away, probably more likely, then we can get it apart. So to do that, I've got some old, but hopefully still good, RTV gasket maker. So hopefully, like I said, if we need to, we can pull it apart. So we're just going to clamp everything together to make sure that this stays in place for right now. Once this cures, then we'll assemble it, and it'll be ready to put back in the car. Alright, got a nice little RTV. Drop that guy in there. Clean up all the stuff that squishes out, which is a lot. Oh, we're making a mess. Went poorly. Not really, but, you know, still making a mess. Alright. Alright, there we go. Now that this is kind of temporarily bolted together, we just need to wait for this to cure, and then we can move forward with getting this all put back together. Well, while we're waiting on that to cure, back to the blower motor, try and take it apart. I don't think this is going to work either, but we're going to try. It's been soaking. Fix it with fire. Winning. Kind of. And by winning, I mean we got the set screw out. Chances the rest of this comes apart? Slim. What a pain in the ass. Well, since we know this motor is no good, because you can hook power up to it, it doesn't spin, there's continuity between the power and speed control wires, so it's whatever happened to this poor thing, it is pretty much toast. And it doesn't spin very well at all. So we're going to take this off the mount, and hopefully we can find a new one. Well, it's a little unfortunate that this doesn't work because, well, for one, we found a part number. But two, December 31st, 1958. That's actually kind of cool, seeing a manufacturer date like that. Well, unfortunately, the blower motor is junk, but we at least got it apart. So now I can go about cleaning all this stuff up. So whenever we do source a new blower motor and put everything back in, this will work. Still have to work on the heater box. There's a lot of cleaning on that because it's full of all sorts of nasty crap. And it's got a few cracks and stuff in it that doesn't bode well for its longevity. So, still got to keep working forward, but slowly knocking out the underdash stuff. Taking the blower motor apart gave enough time for a couple things to happen. One, the RTV on our 3D printed repaired foot pump had time to cure, and the paint on the pedal assembly also had enough time to cure good enough. So, gotta take this apart, or clamp that's holding it together. And now, we can get it assembled. Or bellows with the spring inside of it. Then, this goes on the inside of that. This is the tricky part, which is actually getting this back in. I say that, and I'm really hoping it's just going to drop in. Okay, dropped in pretty good. I'll take that. All right. Well, and there we go. That is one repaired windshield washer fluid foot pump, saved with 3D printing. Of all the things I thought we were going to use 3D printing for, that wasn't one of them. So Just goes to show just how useful a 3D printer can be, even on working on something as old as this. Honestly, I think it probably might be more useful on something like this, just because like you can't get parts, so you have to make your own. You know, DIY auto parts. There we go. All right, I almost forgot the finishing touch. We have a brand new rubber pad. So now we have a completed and fixed foot-operated windshield washer pump. Well, we got it all brushed down. We still need to hit it with a shop vac. That'll get a lot of this cleaned up, and then we'll hit it with some black paint like we did the rest of the interior. Why didn't I wait to paint the interior until I already had the dash out? Well, that was because that was back when I was really optimistic that I wasn't going to have to take the dash out. But the dash is out. So here we are. So still need to wipe everything down, but at least got it all scrubbed off. Then we'll hit it with a shop vac and get it with a nice coat of paint, which will protect it, hopefully, for rust for a number of years to come. Well, I got this all wiped down good enough, and all of this wire brushed, and thought I was done. However, right down here, there's two cover plates, and unfortunately, at the very least, the left one, the bottom chunk is just rusting away. So, gonna take that off. The right side, hopefully I don't have to fix, because it's got a lot of real kind of crazy bends in it. The left side is the one that I know is rusty, so I'm hoping it's just the left side, that the right side is good enough. But there's a giant chunk missing out of the left side, so we're going to have to fix that. So I'm going to pull it off, make a quick panel, replacement panel, hopefully, and then put it back on, and then maybe we'll finally get around to finishing painting all of this. You know, I'm going to say it's probably bad when the metal comes off with the screw. so this bracket's in good enough shape. This one seems to be missing a little bit. Not so much here or here, but right here. Yeah, it's like half gone. Cool. And the other half stuck to this gasket, by the way. There's reasons. Got the panels off. The corner of this one is a little bit rough, as in it's gone. This one has some pretty severe weight reduction on it. So we're probably going to remake this one. It's at least flat. This one has a bunch of crazy bends in it, so we might end up repairing this one. And then this bracket actually is fine. One of the three. That's kind of about par for the course. The gasket back here is actually in pretty good shape. What that means is, once I vacuum it out for like the 50th time, we're actually probably going to be able to hit this with some paint. And once I make these panels, actually start putting stuff back in, which will be great because, you know, kind of getting tired of taking apart the car and trying to put it back together. So, vacuum and paint. It won't hurt the gasket to hit it with some paint. It'd actually probably be good for the area around it. So, yeah. We'll at least accomplish something. I don't know what, but it's something. Alright, real quick. Bit of a tech tip. So everyone knows, like, alright, you pull the bags off, you put them in baggies, and you label them. But one thing that you can do that actually takes that a little bit further is you can group bags together. So this is the clutch linkage cotter pin. The reason I had to take it out was I had to disconnect the clutch linkage on the inside to take off these cover panels. So I'm going to put this inside the bag for the steering column cover panels. Now, one thing you can also do is you've got an entire baggie to write notes on. So I wrote small equals lower bolts because all the lower bolts on both panels are the smaller bolts of all of them. Then I've got clutch bracket, which is that little plate where the clutch went through. Lower, because a lower fastener, is a Phillips head. Don't ask me why. It's a Phillips head, but I can write notes on it. You've got all this room. Write notes to remind yourself, so when you go back to put it together, whether it's next week or in 6 months, you're not doing what I'm having to deal with, which is I have a shit ton of bolts. Most of them are rusty, so I don't know how good they're actually going to be, but I have no idea where any of them go because there are labels on 0 parts. So don't end up in the situation that I'm in. Granted, I didn't take this apart, but at least do yourself a favor. Pick up like the world's cheapest Ziploc bags. They don't need to be nice. And label the baggies, and then also write notes on them because you've got all that room. Why not? It can only help. Takes a couple of seconds and could save you several minutes. In the words of John Malecki, let us spray. Well, we've got a good coat of paint on the firewall and lower floor area where we were working and everything. Before anyone comments or thinks about it. The reason I didn't mask off the inside of the windshield is because there's so much overspray on both sides that it turns out it really doesn't matter. Yeah, there's so much. It's going to be a great issue for future me. That windshield does have a crack in it, but we'll deal with that later. And if that's what I have to live with to save a few $100s for now, we'll do that. If not, supposedly there's a brand new windshield somewhere at Adam's place. We'll see. But for now, that's not the end of the world. Well, we're waiting on this to dry. Adam's coming over, so we're going to stay away from all of this and actually work on the rear suspension because, you know, they go together. Interior, rear suspension, perfect. Well, Adam's here, and we're at the back of the car, so we're still waiting on the interior to dry. And while that's going on, like I said, Adam and I are going to work on the rear suspension. The rear suspension is actually in really good shape, shockingly, because not much else on the car is. But the shocks are absolutely trash, so we're going to replace those. Hopefully without getting high as a kite, because it's cold outside and kind of cold in here, so the doors are closed when I was painting. So slightly elevated levels of paint fumes. But we're going to ignore that, work on the shocks, and then I'll also show you the kind of weird setup that's going on with this rear suspension. Well, here's the rear suspension, and I told you that there's some weird stuff going on, and at first glance, it looks just like a normal spring under leaf spring configuration. The weird part is these helper springs. All the ones that I've seen before have always been on top, or they've been like a half add a leaf that bolts in with the spring pack where it attaches to the axle with the U-bolts. And so I thought these were installed incorrectly, but it turns out after some research, this was actually a style of helper spring that I don't think has seen the light of day for like 20 years, or probably more. Probably for good reason, but it actually is installed correctly, and it's just basically to give it a little bit more load carrying capacity. For right now, we are going to leave it. If this thing ends up riding like a monster truck, we'll probably take him out, and hopefully that causes it to squat a little bit in the back, assuming if the front is also squatted, and levels it out so it doesn't have any sort of like a stink bug stance. Because this is a cruiser, not a muscle car.
Well, I was talking while I was doing that.
Oh, yeah, that's
Bad idea. Yeah.
the shocks installed, which finishes up the rear suspension. I know that seems crazy given how there were like 9 episodes of the front suspension before it was finally finished, but that actually is it. It's a good thing about leaf springs. If the bushings of the leaf springs aren't shot, which these aren't, surprisingly enough, it's just replacing the shocks that were absolute junk. All right, well, out of my what we're going to do now is start working on tearing apart the carburetor. I did get a rebuild kit for it, but it also looks like it's been on fire, which doesn't really bode well. I did throw this in my parts washer and scrub it a lot, which is why now it looks kind of grayish silver as opposed to brown, because I was questioning whether there's any silver underneath it, because there's like an inch of gunk and everything else. I've never seen a carburetor that bad. It was impressively terrible. So now we're going to start tearing it apart and see if it's something that we can actually rebuild. Holy crap. Alright, I don't know if you guys can see what we're dealing with. I've never seen a carburetor this bad. I'm sure someone has, but my limited experience with carburetors, I sure as hell haven't. This is impressively terrible. But we're going to keep tearing it apart and see what we can do.
Yeah. After 15 minutes, we're hitting with a hammer. Ugh.
I gave up a while ago.
I knew it when you started hitting it with a hammer. All right, as you see here, Grant's going to be ordering a new carburetor.
Well, if you're still here, that means that you suffered along with Adam and I through the Carb rebuild that wasn't. We had pretty low expectations for it anyways, but when we opened it up and it looked like it'd been, chilling with the Titanic, that was not a good sign. I haven't completely given up on it. It's sitting in the parts washer at this point, just kind of waiting for a miracle. So I've already started looking at other options that will work with this size engine and power level and everything else, so we can end up with a good running car that doesn't involve going to EFI. I'd like to get there at some point, just not quite yet. So, in the meantime, we're going to try and work on something so we can end the episode on a high note. That something is rebuilding / repairing the steering column cover panels. As you remember, when I pulled them out, one of them was in okay shape but needed a little bit of work, and the other one was it was returning to the earth. So that's what we're going to go start with, is cleaning those up and seeing what we're actually working with and what we need to do to fix that. Well, this is the panel that we are wanting to keep. The major reason for that is it's got all these complex bends, and other than this bottom chunk right here, the rest of it's actually in pretty good shape, in terms of it's not completely falling apart. So the plan is to clean this up so we know exactly what we're working with, but we're going to end up cutting right here, remaking this piece and welding it on, and then hitting it with some paint, so it looks nice, and then installing it back in the car. So this piece is fairly solid. This piece, on the other hand, is not. This bottom chunk is gone. And then this is really thin here, and then this parts right here are also pretty much gone. So there's very little that is actually worth saving. This does have a little bit of a lip on it, which is kind of unfortunate, but we've got the sheet metal brake, so we can work with that. Alright, well, as you can see, this one's actually pretty solid, except for right there. So that's basically where we're going to cut and re-weld. This one, not even going to worry about cleaning up because there's no point because it's just too far gone. Well, that is most of the holes drilled. There's at least one more hole down here, but that part of the metal doesn't exist on my template, so we're going to have to do a little work to figure out exactly where it goes. Well, from measuring on the car, we know that that hole should be 3 inches over, so we're going to pull the hole 3 inches over. Alright, there we go. We got a nice little bend. Now we just need to bend it this way. Sometimes a hammer really is the right answer. Alright, well, now we have the two pieces done. You can see there's a little bit of a weld line from that repair. I'm not too worried about that just because it's purely cosmetic, and I didn't want to make it too thin, so I didn't want to grind any more than I absolutely had to. And here is the brand new piece. So you've got old, new. Actually pretty happy with how it turned out. Hopefully all the holes line up, because there's only so much I can do. If not, we'll make them a little bit bigger because the only ones that actually get threaded into, I think, are these two. So the rest of them go actually into the car. And then when they overlap, they actually fit together quite nicely. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Well, we've got the two panels here that are all painted and dry. We know we're going to have to drill one additional hole. It's the one in this bottom corner. Remember, that was the corner that was completely gone on this part. But we have the hole over here, so all we really need to do is match the two up. We'll mark it, pull it out, and drill it. But we want to get this in, so at least putting stuff back on the car, because that doesn't always happen. I didn't paint the screws, probably should have, but, you know, if it bugs me, I can always do that later. That's enough to figure out where to locate it. I'm gonna bolt this one up. is the cover panel's in, so yeah, we at least got something done. You will notice that if you can see, probably not from there, but I didn't put in the gasket where the clutch linkage goes. The reason for that is because the clutch linkage needs some work. As in, I disconnected this side off the pedal, and the whole thing fell off the front of the car. So that's great. Well, I told you that the panels were going to be the end of the episode, but I got one more thing. We're actually going to test fit the front carpet. The reason for that is so I can see what I can install and what I need to leave off of the firewall. But also a little bit of motivation, and we're going to see just how good it actually looks. Yeah, this is pretty sick. Now this is where we're gonna end the episode. We've got the carpet test fit installed here, so I know what all I can install on the firewall and what all I need to leave off. So that's really good information for me. But how sick is this? Yes, I know it's not flat or stuck to the ground or any of that, but man, this looks sick. Like this is the first time the interior actually kind of looks like an interior. So this is sick. Well, like I said, this is where we're leaving off. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want to keep following along, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other episodes, because we're going to be documenting this whole build. If you haven't seen the other episodes, make sure to check them out, because there's a lot of really kind of cool stuff on there. If you go back to episode 1, that's where we talk about the history of this car, and then kind of you can see all the stuff that we found inside it. But we're going to end it there. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you all later.